Channel 206. We're going to continue the NFL conversation with Lance Zierlein. Lance Zierlein is, of course, an NFL media analyst, and you can follow him on Twitter at Lance Zierlein, and you can see Lance on NFL.com's NFL's Now live, providing live coverage of the 2018 NFL Draft in Dallas, April 26th through the 28th. Lance, appreciate a few minutes. It's Zach Gelb on CBS Sports Radio. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Zach?
Lance, I'm doing great. Appreciate you hopping on board with us. Let's start with the biggest news in the National Football League in the last 24 hours, and that's the former Cowboys wide receiver now in Dez Bryant. I thought this was a little bit late to release a player this late in the game. I thought the timing of it was odd. How about yourself and your reaction to the Cowboys cutting Dez Bryant?
I don't really know what to make of it necessarily. I mean, clearly this is something it could just be they wanted to get far enough along in their draft process to understand what their board looked like. And it actually takes longer than most people just assume. General managers are keeping up with college football like everyone else is who follows it, or all the draftniks out there who follow. But the fact is, right after the season's over, you got to start looking at your own free agents. You got to look at other teams' free agents. And GMs are actually a little bit late to the party in getting to that. So are the coaches. So this could just basically be the team wanted to be completely confident in where they have their slotting for their draft board before they ended up making this decision, and feel confident that they could get a guy that they wanted in the first round. So it might just be a matter of, hey, let's just make sure and take care of who it is and who we want to target in the first round, and what our game plan is going to be in the first and second rounds in terms of wide receiver, because obviously it's a huge need now.
Dez Bryant's production over the last few years has been in a steady decline, and it wasn't worth his current price tag with the Dallas Cowboys. How much do you think he has left in the tank in the National Football League?
I mean, I think he still has something left, but it has, we've got to set a reasonable standard, a reasonable bar. He has worked with a rookie and then second-year quarterback over the last 2 years. Neither one of those years did he hit even 800 yards receiving or even 70 catches. He's basically for 3 years been unimpressive from a statistical and production standpoint. Some of it might have to do with the young quarterback. That's certainly part of it. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he doesn't separate and get open like he used to. And I think that's a big concern for Dez, is he has to live a life of contested catches, and that's tough when you're the wide receiver one, and a lot of times you're dealing with the top cornerbacks in the league. I think he's gone from being, to having small advantages to being even to now maybe being a little bit overmatched by some of the corners that he's seeing. So I think if Dez found a role as a wide receiver two somewhere, that would certainly help. If he had a really dynamic second wide receiver, maybe one with a lot of speed down the field, that could help him. But Dez is a possession receiver, and possession receivers tend to have limited shelf lives unless you're Quan Barkley. I think he's considered himself a vertical guy for a lot of his career, the ability to work all three, levels of the field. I think now what you have to do with Dez Bryant is say, look, you're a possession receiver. You're probably going to be catching, catches around 12 to 12.4 yards a catch. You're not going to be the same vertical threat because everything turns into jump balls.
When we look at the potential next home for Dez Bryant, the first two teams I thought of, Lance, was the Packers and the 49ers. What do you think about maybe those two potential fits?
49ers came right to my mind as well, and to a lesser extent, I could see a team potentially like the Colts. And I would only say Colts if you knew that you had Andrew Luck coming back and he was going to be the guy. I think it'd be great to give him a big target, a guy who has some football IQ, and Dez Bryant. I think that'd be an interesting fit. Now, that's not a ready-made team in terms of ready to win. But I think it is an interesting fit. The best fit to me, I wouldn't match him up with Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers would want him over there. But I do think that the 49ers fit is an interesting one as well, because Garoppolo needs to have a big target. But see, the thing is, everyone knows Dez is this big alpha on the field, and he commands the ball and demands the ball. And I'm not sure that that's really going to jive with the personality of Kyle Shanahan. So while I think he'd be a good fit football-wise, we have to remember that Dez is not just some wilting flower. I mean, he is the guy who's going to be loud. He's going to be abrasive at times. You got to have the right quarterback and the right head coach and maybe even the right locker room for him.
We're talking to Lance Zierlein right now on CBS Sports Radio. We'll get into the NFL draft, your bread and butter, in just a second, but we have to talk a little Colin Kaepernick. We're hearing two stories over the last few days, one from Adam Schefter and one from Ian Rappaport. How do you interpret this situation between the Seahawks and Colin Kaepernick?
Well, what I've heard from a pretty good source is that they demanded to know his stance, and when he wouldn't give them a stance, they said, "That's it, we're done. We're not going to go any further than that." And he just didn't want to give his stance. So, from what I understand, it was the team side made that decision, and that's what happened. Is the team just said, unless you can come through and tell us you're not going to do this anymore, because remember that was his narrative at one point. He said he was not going to kneel any longer, and then, of course, it's changed along the way. So I think they wanted some clarity. They couldn't get clarity, and they decided to move on. And obviously, they have added another quarterback since then. And I guess that's out in terms of Seattle. Although I would still say Seattle still has room for another quarterback there. I mean, they still have a bit of a mess at the backup quarterback spot right now.
Lance, I don't think Colin Kaepernick is going to be playing in the National Football League again. Do you at least think he'll get an opportunity? Do you see a team maybe signing him?
Man, Zach, I don't know. I mean, I thought so previously, but it feels like Colin's in the midst of making another stance, and this time he's saying, I'm going to show you that I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to fight for what I believe in, and if you want to sign me, that's fine. If not, let's face it, if not, he is a martyr, and he is a guy that a lot of people will point to as a guy who is willing to risk his career for what he believed in, and there's something to be said for that. However, if he really does want to play, first and foremost, the owners have to be okay with the fact that their fan base won't turn on them, because at the end of the day, this is still a business, and they don't want to lose their customers. But Colin could help to assuage their concerns with some of his own words and actions. But the fact that he said he would not give an answer on that leads me to believe that he's basically going to go down the path of, hey, I've already done this for this long. If I never play again, I never play again. But I'm not going to give in now. Before I was willing to give in. Now I will play, but only if it's on my terms. And if that's going to be the case, it's going to be hard for him to get back in the league, I think.
Lance, let's talk about Reuben Foster. This is another ugly situation. He's accused of 3 felonies, and this is a very messy situation that it seems like a regularity in the National Football League every year when it comes to domestic violence. With this one, how do the 49ers balance due process also by it just not looking good for them by keeping Reuben Foster on their roster?
I had that same discussion on my radio show this morning. This is what I feel. We have to be very careful, and that includes the NFL, that we don't eliminate due process. No matter what, we have to abide by that. We have to abide by that philosophy that innocent until proven guilty. With that said, every team has their own security department. The league has a security department. You can get the information you need as a team, and I think once a player is charged, I don't know that he has to necessarily be found guilty before you drop him from a roster. You could certainly suspend him immediately if you're the NFL, pending further information, further until the legal battle is in a legal course, until the legal side runs its course. But I also think that if you have enough information that this is accurate info and you really believe that, I think the NFL can basically say suspended indefinitely with the potential for him to to be reinstated or to petition for reinstatement. I think the NFL has not only a right, but maybe even a duty to do that if they feel like they have enough information. I'm not calling for anyone to do anything without the amount of information, without due process. But at the same time, I don't know that in every case you have to wait to hear a verdict of guilty or not guilty. Sometimes you have enough information that you can step in and preemptively make some decisions. So, that's just one man's thought, but it's so heinous what we read that it's really a bad look for him to be on a roster for very much longer based on the story that's out there. But at the same time, I guess the NFL really has to balance, perception versus due process. And I don't think that's an easy one.
We're talking to Lance Zierlein right now on CBS Sports Radio on the Zach Gelb Show. You could see Lance on NFL.com's NFL Now Live, providing live coverage of the 2018 NFL Draft in Dallas, April 26th through the 28th. Let's talk about that draft right now, Lance. For the number 1 overall pick, we're hearing Sam Darnold, the USC quarterback, and we're also hearing about Josh Allen, the Wyoming quarterback. Who do the Browns take with the number 1 overall selection?
I think it's ultimately going to be Sam Darnold. I know Josh Allen is making the rounds, but when push comes to shove, that team really wants to win, and you can try to hit a home run with Josh Allen, but there just aren't enough. I just don't think there's enough tape out there to show that he can overcome some of his issues, or there's not enough flashes of first pick of the draft type talent to take that chance with Josh Allen. Worst case scenario with Sam Darnold, you hit a single and he's an average starting quarterback that can manage a game and win some games for you. But with Josh Allen, I think there's just a really, really low floor where he has bust potential. And I think Sam Darnold has actually a pretty high ceiling. I actually am a fan of Sam Darnold on the next level. I think he's going to project because he has really good intangibles. So I would say when it's all said and done, John Dorsey is going to see it the same way, and he's going to take his shot with Sam Darnold.
I know you like Sam Darnold, as you were just saying, but with that being said, do you like him as the best quarterback in this year's draft?
Yes, I do. I actually think it's definitely Sam Darnold. I think second best is Josh Rosen, not Josh Allen. And I think Baker Mayfield is, third, and then Lamar Jackson fourth. Now, with all that said, I do believe that there are 5 quarterbacks, and the 5 quarterbacks I just mentioned, I think they can all become solid to good NFL starters. Unfortunately, I think 4 of them have low floors, and the only guy that I think has a decent floor is Sam Darnold. So you have to balance the floor versus the ceiling as well.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Lance. I think Sam Darnold is the best quarterback in this draft, and we'll go number 1. But then let's look at the Giants at number 2. Some people may think they know what the Giants are doing. I have no clue what the G-men will do. You could go quarterback, Barkley, defense, or maybe even trade the pick. What do the Giants do sitting in there at number 2?
I have no idea. That is a tough one because they're really being quiet. They're saying all the right things about Eli Manning, but come on, we know Eli Manning's just about done. So they've got to be looking for the next quarterback. There's no way it's Davis Webb. I'm not buying that at all. So they could look quarterback here, but I think they want to keep it as vague as possible because we all know that second pick in years past has really garnered a lot of attention. And if you saw the Jets paid 3 seconds to move from 6 to 3, I think the Giants would love to see some type of draft like that. And hopefully, I think they'd love to hear to get a phone call from the Buffalo Bills offering both the first rounders this year and a first next year. I think that's something they'd love to see, but I'm not sure they're going to get that. If they sit tight, Bradley Chubb makes a lot of sense there, and so does Quan Barkley, and I think they're 2 of the top 3 picks in this draft. Really, frankly, I think Quentin Nelson even makes sense there. But we know quarterback's such an important position, and if they do look at quarterback, I don't know that either Rosen or Allen has the mental makeup to survive that brutal media in New York. I think that's a big question mark.
Lance, if I give you 5 picks right now of 5 players that are going to be studs for the next 5 to 10 years in the National Football League, who are the 5 players that you're going to take your money and put them on for the next 5 to 10 years in the National Football League in this year's draft?
It's easy. It's Barkley, Chubb, Quentin Nelson, Roquan Smith, and Tremaine Edmonds.
And there's no hesitation with Barkley. Everyone's saying he's a can't-miss player. We've seen that before with some running backs. He seems like a very good player, but is there any question marks with Saquon Barkley?
I think the only concerns I have is that he's a little bit of a shifty runner. Now, I would also argue that he'll avoid some of the big hits that you see from other guys, but I think there does need to be. He can't just try to hit home runs all the time. He has to know when to shut the run down and gain his 3 yards and not try to, wiggle sideways and try to make these miraculous escapes all the time. I think he's got to learn that this is a league full of fast players, and the north-south route is better than the east-west route. But I think that's the only real concern there.
Wrapping up with Lance Zierlein right now on CBS Sports Radio. Lance, one last team that I want to get your take on, that's the Patriots. They have 2 first-rounders. What do you see them doing with those 2 first-rounders? And also the inevitable is trying to get a quarterback. Where can you possibly be seeing the Pats take a quarterback?
I don't know that the Patriots take a quarterback in the first round. I know they've got 2 firsts, and everyone's assuming maybe that's going to be a run at quarterback. I think they're just trying to rebuild their roster with as many blue chip players as possible. And, I could see them looking tight end for Rob Gronkowski's replacement, actually, in the first round. What about this? What if they went with Hayden Hurst with the first pick and Lamar Jackson with the second pick? Wow. If they took 2 guys to replace Gronk and Brady. Now, Gronk is going to be better than Hayden Hurst. But the Lamar Jackson thing is interesting to me because everyone looks at Tom Brady and they assume the Patriots way is the Tom Brady way in that offense. Let me tell you something. Bill Belichick just got his brains kicked in by the offense of the Philadelphia Eagles, which featured, frankly, an average quarterback in Nick Foles, who ran an RPO system that came from the college ranks and even the high school ranks, and they weren't able to handle it. Well, you don't think a guy like Bill Belichick, who's always ahead of the game, could sit there in his meetings, in draft meetings, and watching tape and think, I could get my hands on this guy, Lamar Jackson, and he is capable of doing a lot more potentially than Nick Foles, and we could really have something going here. It would be a complete reset, obviously, on the offensive scheme and philosophy of the New England Patriots. But you're running that offense because it fits Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback ever to play. I don't see the Chicago Bulls and LA Lakers still running the triangle offense because Michael Jordan's not there. So once Tom Brady is gone, I think all bets are off for what type of team that is. So if they were to draft a Lamar Jackson, it's basically Bill Belichick saying, as soon as Tom Brady's gone, we're going in a completely different direction. So I wouldn't take it completely off the books.
Well, it's an interesting thought, no question. Lance, we always appreciate your time. Thanks so much. We'll do it again real soon.
Yep. Thanks, Zach.